Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to you, me, and Loki, your Loki discussion guide as we traverse the multiverse of the new Disney Plus series, Loki. With me, as always, is Nick W., and I am Alex Steele, and we're going to jump on in. So, Nick, on this episode of Loki, we traveled to the planet of... My notes here say... Lamentis.
Lamentis 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Lamentis 1, correct. It was in 2007's Annihilation Conquest, Prologue number 1, it was first introduced. So it is a planet that has been within the Marvel Universe for a while, though it seems to just kind of be a throwaway reference in this episode. But we find after escaping into the Time Door, Loki and the variant Loki, who has the fans have taken on as knowing as the female Loki, they travel to the TVA, where the female Loki attempts to gain access to the Timekeepers. After a brief skerfuffle in a hallway with some TVA agents, they use a time door to escape, and that's what lands them on Lamentis 1. From there on, it is an escape from Armageddon, basically, as Lamentis 1 is being destroyed by an oncoming meteorite attack, and Loki and our variant Loki are attempting to escape.
Yes, this is a quieter episode. Not too much plot stuff necessarily happens. It's a lot of character, getting to understand more of Loki, more of Lady Loki. As well as, though, that there is a pretty big mic drop moment that is kind of subtly kind of dropped there in the episode, and we'll discuss that. But I think that overall this episode, it's just priming the gears. Like the last episode ended with a kind of like mic drop, like, oh shit, look at all like the different strands, like the variant is exploding, the timeline is expanding and stuff, and like everything's going into chaos, basically. And it's interesting that we're not immediately going to, like, we have to fix this. Like, we have to, go to each thing and, like, repair it or whatever. This kind of felt like a detour. So it's going to be interesting to see where in the next half, because we only have 3 episodes left, how they fix this, or maybe they don't even fix this. Yeah.
So one of the first obstacles that our two Lokis, our Dos Lokis now run into. Of course, the first legitimate problem being that they're trapped together and they seem to not enjoy each other's company. And there's a lot of push and pull that happens in this episode. Because at the end of the day, this episode is more about the relationship between this female Loki and Loki. The female Loki, who we learn prefers to go by Sylvie.
Thank you.
Which is interesting, because we did pick up on that
I'm
last
glad that you
episode.
said that, though. Thank you for saying that, because I'm tired of calling her Lady or Female Loki. Like, thank God we have a name. It's like Sylvie. Cool. Even if it doesn't stay that way, if she takes on the name of Enchantress, like, as it seems like they're maybe, lightly playing around with that idea. They said enchant and enchanting and enchantment a lot in this episode.
That's seemingly the only magic that she knows.
Right.
Seemingly.
But maybe this is not her final form.
Correct. We don't know. So one of the first problems that they face is the fact that their time door opener, the tempad, dies. So they don't have power.
Yeah, so that seems to be what launches them on their journey. They have this back and forth of like, I'll kill you. It's like, no, you won't. It's like, I would like to. And it's like, you need me. And like, we got to work together. And there's still so much I want to learn. Like, maybe we can work together, like overthrow the Timekeepers together. So after some squabbling and stuff, they disembark to try to find a source with which they can charge it. Turns out that there's this thing called the Ark, which is a large vessel that is going to be leaving the planet, presumably saving a certain portion of the population, leaving the rest to die.
Along the way, we have moments between Loki and Sylvie that feel a little weird for me, One of those moments I would include would be the first time that Sylvie tries to enchant Loki. He's like up against a wall, and she like gets in real close and like puts her hands like on the sides of his head, and he's like, you can't enchant me. And she's like, why not? And he's like, my mind is too strong. But that moment leading up to it, it almost feels like she's seducing him, which, if they're both Loki, is weird. That's a weird moment. And there are a lot of these kind of strange romantic moments that I think happen in this episode that would lead you to believe that they are heading in the direction of some sort of a ship kind of a thing, which is kind of a far stretch. But when it comes to writing, especially writing fiction like this, there are subtle things that writers always seem to do, these cliches that happen in storytelling. And a lot of those got hit in this episode between those two. I don't think Sylvie is actually a Loki. And I would use the fact that they are using some of these different romantic gestures and things to suggest that at end all be all, I don't think Sylvie is really a variant of Loki.
No. As discussed on our lovely lunch. And as evidenced by the revelation of, and this is something that we should definitely talk about as we kind of wrap this episode up, we learned that the agent that was first brainwashed and taken away by Sylvie, the episode actually opens with them like having a nice, a lovely lunch out like on a beach resort. And at first I was like, what is this? Like this kind of like a flashback or something like that? Did these two characters know each other? But turns out it was Sylvie doing like mind games, like almost like force, like interrogating her, like getting into her mind to find out information about where the timekeepers are. And what that prologue and what later happens in the episode reveals to us is that that agent, and ostensibly most, if not all, of the Minutemen and agents of the TVA are actually humans, like regular Earthbound humans that either elected to join this or were kidnapped or abducted or something like that, and brainwashed and led to believe that they were created by the timekeepers and their sole purpose is to defend the sacred timeline. So this opens a whole new door now. It calls into question a lot of what's going on with the TVA, who the timekeepers are, Ravonna Renslayer, Mobius, all of that.
Loki and Sylvie find themselves on a train headed towards the Ark. And after finding seats, they have a brief discussion. Loki begins drinking champagne, which eventually leads to Loki becoming intoxicated. But Sylvie actually falls asleep and takes a nap. When she wakes up, Loki is singing an Asgardian tune, singing with played accompaniment from someone playing some weird instrument on this train.
Like a harp or something.
It's something strange. And Sylvie realizes that this singing has alerted the guards. Now, something interesting that happens in this moment.
Not only that, he was out of his costume. He was in regular Loki variant garb. So she's like, what are you doing? Like, you're not in disguise anymore. And he was just too drunk.
And he was like, nobody cares. It's the end of the world. But it turns out they did care. But something that I did want to note there, and I'm harping pretty hard on the I don't think Sylvie is a Loki theory that I have going. In that moment, Loki looks to her and starts singing this slow part in Asgardian. And you can read the reaction on Sylvie's face. She is more confused than she is. She doesn't show really any recognition for the song that's being sung. Yeah. We know Loki is a trickster god. We know that he's always thinking 3 steps ahead. He's always coming up with these schemes and plans. And I kind of feel like in that moment, that whole thing was to test Sylvie and to see, are you really me? Do you know Asgardian? Do you know this lullaby that maybe somebody important sang to Loki a long time ago? There are a lot of details in Sylvie's background that we don't get to know and that Loki doesn't know. Loki actually brings that up. He's like, you know all this stuff about me. I don't know anything about you. That's kind of the next step after they're eventually tossed off of a train by the guards, breaking the tempad, and now have to walk to the Ark. During this walk, they discuss, like, hey, I don't know you at all. And she's like, yeah, you gave me the tactical advantage by telling me everything about you. And it's like, how much should a Loki variant already kind of know? How much is universally true about Loki? And either they would lead you to believe that kind of nothing, or Sylvie doesn't know this stuff for a reason. And maybe Sylvie isn't delving into her past for a reason.
Yes, that's a great pull on the whole song part. I did not interpret that on first viewing when he slows down and sings that lullaby of sorts. Clearly trying to convey something to her and see if she picks up on it, if she is indeed a alternate version of himself. Which this is the theory is growing more and more strong that she is not, in fact, Loki. But that makes me wonder, she's got like the horns and one's broken, and her garb, her costume evokes Loki. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So
I would agree with that.
What's the point in that? If she in her core is not a Loki variant, like in an alternate dimension, because I think it was the first or second, it was the second episode, they were cycling through showing, oh, there's like a big buff Loki, there's this other Loki, there's like all these different, variants or whatever of Loki. So if she's not one of those, then why would she want to be disguising herself as Loki? Because that's her whole get up. You can't not connect it to Loki. So what's the purpose in that?
I think that a lot of the clues actually come from the fact that she's dressed like Loki. Not only is she, first off, from what we know, she only knows the enchantment spell. So she doesn't know, like, illusion. She can't, like, change her clothes as we see Loki do in this episode. So what my thoughts are that she's wearing legitimate Loki clothes. That would lead you to believe she was never captured by the TVA. Because when you get captured by the TVA, the first thing that you do is they, like, incinerate your clothes or whatever they do, and then they give you the jumpsuit, they tell you to wear it, you sign the thing that says everything that you have ever talked about. If she had been captured by the TVA, as I assume all of these other variant Lokis who have escaped have, she wouldn't have all of those clothes. Now, it's fair to assume maybe she was never captured by the TVA and she has always been on the run. For what we learn in this episode has been years. I don't know if you picked up on that, but she said her plan that she was working through took her years to plan, which means she's been running for years. This Loki's only been going at it for maybe a week tops. If she truly has been running for years, then maybe that's why she has the clothes. But if not, my theory is she's a decoy. She's a decoy Loki. Now, we know in the comics that Enchantress was actually made by Loki because Loki was bored. When asked, why'd you make me? Loki said, I was bored, so I made you. And that's how Enchantress comes to be in the comics. If we're to believe that this is the same as the comics, then my theory is another variant Loki created Sylvie, created, quote unquote, to get into the TVA and to cause havoc in the TVA and eventually maybe even tear it down. Because that Loki is truly the one who's running from the TVA. Now, this is a distraction, is what this is. And because of that, they give her the Loki garb, teaches her a spell, because you can just learn it. We've learned it in this episode, actually. Loki told us how he learned his magic. It was through his mother. So, taught her one spell and sent her to cause havoc in the TVA for a grander plan that maybe isn't clear to us yet.
Yes, I think you're not too far off. I think that is valid. This this kind of brings me, though, where you're leading with that brings me to, I guess, like the overall get that I got from this episode, which I already kind of teased, which is like, are the agents of the TVA, are the Minutemen, are they mostly, or if not all, actually humans that were either elected to join this, brainwashed, abducted, all that jazz, right?
Yeah.
That revelation comes in this episode, and it goes to speak about, when you think about specifically Mobius, you had that, and I'll get back to the whole Sylvie thing about what her purpose is and stuff, because if she's not considered a variant, if her actions are not deviating from the sacred timeline, so to speak, or her existence or whatever, then that would call into question about, like, what is the sacred timeline, and is it really real? Are the timekeepers real? Like, what is really going on here? Which is the revelation of the TVA agents and Minutemen all potentially being actual humans. That kind of cracks open the theory of a nefarious scheme, a veiled conspiracy that is happening within the TVA. Is Ravonna Renslayer, is she hiding stuff from the TVA workers and Mobius? Is she tied with Kang like she is in the comics? Is Kang one of the timekeepers, or one of the quote-unquote timekeepers? Is that his face erected on the back of the judge room wall? Because you can kind of see it's kind of like warped looking, but it kind of looks like him. So all these things come into question, because then if all of this is just kind of like a smoke and mirrors show, then this whole notion of a sacred timeline, and we must not deviate from the timeline, and the timekeepers know the past, present, and future, and if you deviate from what is already preordained, you will be basically taken by the TVA and course corrected, ostensibly, right? You're a fugitive, you're a variant, you've deviated from the path that was assigned before you, even though you didn't know. You're on a tread line, but you can't see the track, but you're going that way regardless. Sidebar: brilliant television miniseries, Devs. It's on, I think it's on Hulu or whatever. It's from Alex Garland. It goes to a lot of kind of what we're talking about, of like, is there such thing as free will, or are we all destined on a certain path that we cannot break from? I would highly recommend investigating into that show, because there's a lot of heady shit in that. But you had a very interesting connection that was made about Mobius's interaction with Ravonna Renslayer in, I believe, the previous episode, when they're having that conversation in her office. Please speak to that.
So I think it's important first to note, in this episode, a huge bomb got dropped. Let's just be straight out forward and talk about it, because it has to do with my theory for Mobius. And it's that she just straight out says, no, these people are from Earth. They're all variants like you and me. So everyone who works for the TVA...
Did she say that verbatim? I must have missed that.
She said that verbatim.
She blanketly stated that. Okay.
It was a very blanket statement. So she says that, and then Loki says, none of them know that. So that's kind of the big bomb that got dropped. So in that moment, here's some things that immediately crossed my mind. Number one, all of the information that we have about the TVA has either come from the TVA via Miss Minutes, or from Mobius. If Mobius / Ravonna don't know that they're variants, then how much of what they have told us is true? About more extensively in the last episode, when Mobius talked on, this is the way it's going to work, this is how my life is going to go, I'm going to be here until the end of time, and then at the end, we all meet in peace at the end of time, when the final string is unraveled from the timeline, as promised. Now, if he doesn't know he's a variant, how do we know that he is right and true about the information he's sharing to us? So now everything's thrown into question. The theory to which you are referring to is that there is in fact more than one Mobius variant. Mobius in the office in the second episode goes to put his glass down, and he leaves a ring. I actually rewatched this looking for screenshots for our thumbnail for this episode, and he seems confused because he doesn't remember leaving those rings. Ravonna says, "You always do this. You left all of those rings." But they're talking about this separate agent while this conversation's happening. These are like throwaway lines. It's my theory that the second agent that they're talking about, who's completing all of these things that Mobius isn't, actually is Mobius. It's another variant of Mobius that she also uses for the same job. Now, how they never run into each other, how they never meet, I don't know. But apparently there's an agent out there who Mobius hasn't met yet because he doesn't know who this mystery agent is in that scene. He's asking about them. It's my theory that that is, in fact, another Mobius that gets sent out whenever this Mobius comes back in. When this Mobius comes back in, that Mobius gets sent out and no one's the wiser. But they're able to do twice as much at once. If that's true, then Renona is in on it. We know that much. Because Renona would be the only one to know that there are multiple Mobiuses, and thus she would be able to acknowledge the fact that everyone is a variant. They're all variants. So if she knows they're all variants, she must be somehow connected to this big plot of hiding the fact that they're variants. Now, the question is why? Nick, you brought up before that in the comics, Renona has a relationship with Kang. So, in my theory at least, that's still in the MCU. She still has a relationship with Kang, and Kang, as you may have guessed, is one of the timekeepers, quote-unquote timekeepers, because it looks like his face behind her on the wall. Now, that clue has been deep planted. So many other people have talked about it, how in the very first episode, who does Renona sit in front of but the face that looks like Kang? So there must be some connection there. We all know that.
And the middle timekeeper in the Miss Minutes presentation looks a lot like him too. I think they're all blue-faced, if I'm not mistaken. But specifically, the guy in the middle looks. And if you also look at a picture of the actor who's going to play Kang, Jonathan Majors, and you take a photo of his face and you look at the middle timekeeper in that Miss Minutes presentation and the timekeeper heads in the judge hall and even the timekeeper statues in the main area of the TVA, the similarity is definitely not, like, it's definitely there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it definitely seems like they're trying to loosely prime the gears for this reveal. Whether or not that is revealed at all in this series remains to be seen. This may just be like light seed planting that won't pay off until we actually get closer to Ant-Man. But I definitely think that Ravonna and Miss Minutes are in on this. I don't think anyone else in the TVA has any clue about what's really going on. And I was actually reading something. This comes courtesy of IMDb trivia. So it says that this episode reveals that the workers of the TVA were not created by the Timekeepers, but are instead all variants, right? This also gives us a hint as to why Mobius is so interested in the 90s and jet skis. It's possible he came from that time period.
And he doesn't know how long he has worked for the TVA, which he also says in that conversation with Loki, where they talk about the jet skis, and also where he mentions that they were all created by the Timekeepers. We know that that's not true, so we have to assume everything in that conversation must have been a little bit off, if not completely false. He mentions he doesn't know how long he's been there, because time moves differently in the TVA. So let's do some more connecting. Nick, I sent you a video before this. So you
just go ahead and
know
do it. I know what you're about to do.
In what direction I'm heading. Time moves differently in the TVA. We know that much. So there's this theory going around that the TVA is actually in the quantum realm, as seen in Ant-Man and the Wasp. There's a scene where, as they're flying through the quantum realm in Ant-Man and the Wasp, there's a city in the background. People believe that that city is the TVA. Now, if that's the case, that would plant the TVA in our universe. It's also important to mention that when Scott entered the the quantum verse, he thought he was there for 5 minutes. He was actually there for 5 years. That's an endgame. So time moves differently in the quantum realm. We know that. So if time moves differently at the TVA and time moves differently in the quantum realm, and we think we saw the TVA in the back of the quantum realm, it's fair to assume that's maybe where this all takes place, in the quantum realm. Now, we also know that Kang is going to be a huge villain in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, so maybe this is planting some seeds for that. Maybe at the end of the day, this is what launches that problem into orbit so that we can solve it in Ant-Man and the Wasp, this next movie that's coming up.
Yeah, I certainly think that the way this is going, it seems to be, I guess it's evenly priming both Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, as well as Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Because, you know, with the multiple timelines, variants, like splitting off the sacred timeline, the multiverse battle that allegedly happened in the beginning of time, and then also with all of the sort of Kang connections that we've been making, I think that all these things are being teased. Like I said, I don't know what exactly. I don't want to put all my eggs in the basket. I don't want this to be like a Mephisto in WandaVision kind of thing where we're like, we're going to see Kang and Loki. It's like, probably not. We might not even actually hear his name uttered or anything like that. It might literally be as subtle as what we're already connecting right now. Because as we all know, Marvel plays the long game. And they plan things out, and it's not until we kind of get 5 movies deep that we're like, oh, okay. So, right. Yeah, I think that as we wrap this up, thinking about where we go from here, I guess the big question right now that I have for the show, that I'm hoping we get further clarity on, which I would assume we would, is what exactly is Sylvie's plan? And more about her origin. Where did she come from exactly? How did she get these powers? What is her intention behind getting into the TVA, finding out the timekeepers? What is that? And what is Loki? What's Loki's role in all of this? Like, is he still feeling like he's bestowed a glorious purpose? And is he going to try to also usurp the timekeepers and claim ultimate power within the galaxy? Because after he finds out about the Infinity Stones being ostensibly useless as it pertains to inside the TVA, it's like, this shit is meaningless. Like, it doesn't matter here. Once he saw the sacred timeline and everything like that, he's like, okay, this, being the author and constructor of this timeline, basically, and being able to pull the strings and have absolute authority over that in some ways, is the ultimate power. So is that what he's craving now? Or is he turning over a new leaf, and is he going to try to, work alongside probably a rehabilitated Mobius and basically break out of the TVA and do something like that? I don't know. I hope we figure out those answers. Yeah, those are my thoughts on where I think this could potentially be going.
For me, to kind of wrap up everything, I want to wrap up with kind of my grand theory that I've been hinting at, which is, I think that, and I just want to put this out there so that it's under recorded history. If it were to come true, I can be like, hey, look, I posted this here, and this is what I said. So this is my, call out to the home run. I'm pointing at the sky with my bat, and I'm about to swing.
You're about to do it, all right?
Yeah, I think that Sylvie was sent by a variant Loki, and the only thing Sylvie was sent to do was to prove that there are no timekeepers. I think there's just Kang behind that glass door. I think it's a Wizard of Oz type situation. And that's why they all kind of look alike, but only one of them looks familiar. All of them have blue skin, but only one of them looks like Kang. I think the other two don't exist. I think this is all Kang hiding from something. I don't know what, but he's in hiding, and he has created the TVA to pretend to protect the sacred timeline when all that it's doing is deflecting other timelines. I think there are other timelines that are happening out there that he doesn't want to come into contact with this timeline where he's hiding, much like the variant Loki was hiding in apocalyptic events. I think that if timelines were to cross, something would find Kang that he doesn't want to find him. I don't know what. It's too big to tell. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to find out that the TVA isn't the ultimate power in the universe, and it was all one large trick. And the only person who was able to prove that it was a trick, and the only person who would go through all of the efforts of proving that he was right from the beginning, and that it isn't the ultimate power in the universe, is Loki. If not this one we're watching, then a variant one who made this grand master plan. Maybe one in the future. I think that's what we're going to see play out. I do have a lot of questions, just like you. Most of them you already asked, Nick. But I'm excited for these last 3 episodes to find out where this is going. I think that's all we got for this one.
I think so. I think that we've sufficiently discussed the big hot button discussions of this episode.
I would agree. So with all that being said, we're excited. We want to see what happens next. But this has been You, Me, and Loki for episode 3 of Loki. And we will see you guys again next Wednesday. Until then, see ya.
Farewell.